here. I am standing in for Julie Jones, who's the president of DFW She's the lucky girl that gets to go on vacation. I almost forgot what that's like. Anyways, I want to welcome you to DFW and we appreciate you joining. We've always have a few little technical challenges, and of course, tonight would be no different. But we are going to go ahead and get started. So, as you know, DFW has been in service for 18 years and search engine marketing. This has been such a great organization to me, and I just hope that you guys really, really become part of it. We've got a great board. I love our board members. I don't know what I would do without them, especially for State of Search, and we are less than 2 weeks away. So President Julie Jones, of course, who is gone, Treasurer Bart, and Secretary Jenna. Couldn't do anything without Jenna. I'm the Hospitality and State of Search chairperson. And membership is Kevin. We appreciate Kevin. And sponsorship is Jordan. Jordan is home taking care of his twins. And communications is Casey. And he's the one that always gets to set all this good stuff up for us. And of course, we have our board member at large, which is Tim Shane. Hi, Tim. All right. So to participate, we can always use your help on the committee. So talk to any one of us, whoever you want to, who's close to you, text us, email us. We'd love to have your help. We probably could use a couple more volunteers for State of Search too. So if you have some time, come on and volunteer for us. 2 weeks away. Really, it's less than 2 weeks away. Okay, what's so funny back there?
They can't hear us.
I'm just rambling on. See my mouth move, right?
I enjoyed it.
Help them out.
Sure.
Do you have the mic on?
I do. I was just looking to see if it's turned on. I see little blue lights, which makes me hopeful.
All right, can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? Tell me, Tim, can you hear me now?
I hear you all fine.
Okay. Well, I hope you're hearing me.
Yep, we're good.
Okay. All right, so 2 weeks away, State of Search. Actually, we're less than 2 weeks away. Virtual tickets are $197 and in-person tickets are $447. And if you use the code October, you can get $25 off. And we only have just a few tickets left, so hurry, hurry, hurry. And I'm going to tell you, it's going to be a heck of an event. We're going to have so much fun and so much knowledge that you're going to be so overwhelmed that you won't know where to start when you go back to your office. So make sure that you register. Come on down to State of Search. It's October 24th and 25th. It's in Richardson at the Renaissance Hotel, 8 to 5-ish. The best thing is on Monday night, I shouldn't say best. One of the best things is on Monday night, if you've never learned and you always wanted to learn how to do a podcast, we have an award-winning journalist coming to show us and teach us how to do a podcast. So come on down. We're going to have a lot of fun with that. What are you going to learn? Well, it's unlimited. Lead generation, TikTok, SEO myths, data-driven automation, hiring, negative keyword strategies. I mean, there's so many things that you have the abilities to learn at this conference. You got to be there. You definitely got to be there. So how do you get there? You can be a member of DFW SEM, and corporate memberships run $750, small businesses $400, individuals are $200. So come join DFW SEM. It's well worth every penny that you invest. Are you looking for a job? Some people are looking for a job. Do you know somebody who's looking for a job? We have a page on our website that lists all the places people are looking to hire. So you might want to check that out just as well, because it might be exactly where you want it to be in the digital marketing world. So after this event, let us know what you think and tell us what you liked, what you didn't like. We love all your comments. It doesn't matter because the only way anybody can get better is even with negative comments. So there is a survey at dfwsem.org, virtual meeting survey. So hopefully you'll fill that out because it really helps us know what we want to offer you guys out there or even people in the audience here. So if you have any questions, somebody's watching the chat, make sure that you ask your questions. So with that being said, I think we're ready to introduce our guest. I don't even know your name. Tell me your
Craig
name.
Andrews. Sorry.
I apologize, but this is our guest speaker tonight, and this is Craig.
Yeah.
I'm very embarrassed because I didn't know his name, but I'm being honest. Craig, thank you for being here.
Thank you. And Casey, can you hear me okay? All right. So I live down in Austin, and I took the bus up this morning. And as I was on the bus, I was, by the way, the Bond Lane, if you ever are traveling between here and Austin or here in Houston, Bond Lane's a real nice ride. It's a luxury bus. But I was reading an article saying that according to KPMG, a big consulting firm, 91% of CEOs believe that we're about to enter a recession within the next year. And so this is something very real. It's something on their mind. They're talking about cutting. You probably heard that Facebook's going to cut about 12,000 jobs. And so people are starting to react. And so tonight I want to talk about doing a recession-proof sales choreography. But before I jump into that, let me tell you something else I've been reading. Last year, my wife kept a journal, and she put it online. And day by day, she wrote in that journal, and the journal was mostly about me, because at that time, I was, for much of it, I was unconscious and on a ventilator, and they were telling my wife I was going to die. And so I spent 25 days on the ventilator, and during that time, your body atrophies, and it turns out they were malnourishing me as well. And so I lost 40 pounds in 5 weeks. And October, I looked a little bit like this. And I was learning how to walk. Actually, this photo was taken the day after I walked for the first time. So a couple things to keep in mind. If you see me pausing to breathe, that's because I'm desperately losing oxygen. I don't want to fall out, pass out in front of you. So that's just me taking in a breath and running out of oxygen. But, I've recovered a lot, but I'm still very, very weak in many ways. But there's something I still believe I could do. It's something I did many years ago. When I was at Paris Island, I climbed up and down these ropes. And this is where Marines recruits go for basic training, one of the places. And you'll see them going up and down these ropes, and it looks hard. It looks really hard because when you look at it, you think it's an upper body exercise. But it's really a lower body exercise. And if you look at how they have their legs, they've got the rope wrapped around their legs. And so actually climbing these ropes is pretty easy. I even believe I could do it today. And so the key is, it's about technique. You can take something that looks hard and make it easy if you have the right technique. And so as we're talking about keeping sales growing through the recession, or whatever economy we're facing, there's a lot of debate. It's not about working harder, it's about having the right technique. And that's what we're going to talk about. So back in 2009, there's a company called CEB, which is now a division of Gartner. If you're not familiar with Gartner, they're one of these companies that if you have $10,000 and a question, they have a report that will probably answer that question for you. And the question they were wrestling with was, what type of sales personalities dominate sales? And more specifically, complex sales. So Non-complex sales would be if you can go on Amazon, you see something you like, you buy it. Complex sales would be if you're selling services, if you're selling a product. Typically, it's products that have that are higher dollar, have long sales cycles, and require a high level of trust. And they wanted to know who was the best at selling these during a recession. And so they took data on 6,000 sales reps from across 90 different companies. So huge sample size, lots of diversity. And they took the data and they handed it to a data scientist. And the data scientist said, we see 5 sales personalities in the sample, and we believe that's actually representative of all sales personalities. And as you look at these personalities, you have the lone wolf, you have the hard worker, you have the problem solver, you have the relationship builder, and you have the challenger. Now, if you're like me, you probably thought, oh, the relationship builder. They're always the ones that dominate sales. They have that magic touch. But I was wrong. The relationship builder is not the leading sales personality. They're actually the worst performer of those 5. Kind of surprising. Now, I mentioned the economy. I'm not sure where we're going, what's going on, but I will look to history to see if history has a lesson for us. And if you don't know who this gentleman is, this is James Carville. He's known as the Raging Cajun. And James Carville did something amazing, very, very infrequently done. He ran Bill Clinton's campaign and unseated a sitting president. That's only happened 3 times since the Great Depression. So anybody who does that has done something extraordinary. The other thing that makes it even more extraordinary is a year before the election, George H.W. Bush's approval rating was 95%. And Carville went into that environment and unseated a sitting president with an approval rating of 95%. And on the walls of the campaign headquarters, he wrote, "It's the economy, stupid." Now, the point of that was to focus the campaign and to have them keep a singular focus on one and only one thing, and that is, we're the ones that are going to remove the pain and suffering that you're facing because this economy is rotten. And obviously, it worked. And the point of that was, don't talk about this, don't talk about that. We're talking about the economy. That's who we are. And that singular message won the campaign and did something very, very rarely done. Where it gets interesting is the recession ended 18 months before Election Day. The recession ended in March of 1991. So the economy was actually expanding and had been expanding for 18 months when the election came around. And so the lesson for us is the sting of a bad economy leaves a lasting effect. And so from one angle, I don't care what the different debates are about our current economy. There are enough people, there are 91% of CEOs that think it's bad. And what we should expect is at least another 18 months where it's going to be really hard to sell. People are going to be operating from a scarcity mindset. Now, here's where the news gets worse for the relationship builder. They suffer the most in down economies. But there's some good news. There's this personality called the challenger, whose sales seem undaunted by the economy. They do well in good economies, they do well in bad economies. As a matter of fact, they had trouble telling the difference in their sales numbers from a good economy to a bad economy. Now, one of the things that people try to do as they're going in and facing a tough sales environment is they try to cut price. Now, it's really bad, especially if you're in a period of high inflation. It's bad for a couple reasons. One, price is not the primary motivator, and I'll show that in a minute. But the other reason it's bad is when you're cutting price in a period of high inflation, the speed at which you're imperiling your business is increasing because you're cutting prices while your costs are going up. Your margins are dropping. It's hurting your business at a faster rate when you do that. But we have lots of data that says that's not the mover. Now, the study that I mentioned, they actually went out and talked to these people's customers. And they asked them, what was the primary mover in driving your buying decision? And the number one answer was that the implementation team endorsed the supplier. So basically, if I'm going to write the check, I know, often the person writing the check is not the person doing the work. And so I know if I'm going to write the check, the people beneath me that are doing the work believe this is a good supplier. That's the number one thing, number one criteria that drove the buying decision. They wanted to make sure the team was bought in. Number two was that the supplier was easily accessible. Number three was that the supplier was easy to buy from. Number four, supplier is willing to collaborate with other suppliers. We're not seeing price in the top four items. Finally, number five, price. So it's not just this study. Other people have tested this as well. So my RAND survey asked people what was primary buying decision driver, and they said 53% said quality, 38% said price. Someone else did a survey. They broke it out into B2C, business to consumer, and 18% of business to consumer sales, they said price was the primary driver, only 18%. When they looked at B2B or business to business, it dropped even further. It dropped to 15% in the highest category they reported. So price is not the thing that's going to drive the sales. And so if you're trying to fix your sales problems with price, one, you're not winning the business. It's not working. And two, it's hurting your business at a faster rate because we're in a high inflation period. And I know a company, my stepson worked for them. They sales started going south, and the first thing they did was they went around, looked at all the bids they lost, cut the price, sent them back out. They didn't get another piece of business. Price was not the driver. So the other thing they looked at was what are the who contributes the most revenue, and that's what this chart's showing. So the pie represents 100% of the sales revenue delivered for complex sales. And again, I mentioned complex sales, something that's probably a high dollar product or service with a long sales cycle that requires a high level of trust. Not something you can buy on Amazon. And what they found, the relationship builders only delivered 4% of the revenue, while the challenger delivered 54% of the revenue. That's staggering. For a second, put yourself in the role of being the sales manager. Who are you going to hire? If I'm sales manager, I'm like, find me more of these folks. And maybe while we're doing some cuts, we're going to cut these folks over here. Or if I'm doing sales directly, I'm looking at this, I'm like, ooh, how do I move? How do I move so I'm taking a bigger slice of this pie? Now, when you hear the name challenger, you probably think this is somebody who's confrontational. And I would say generally no. This is not just some rude person that bullies you into a sale. That's not what the challenger is. A challenger is somebody who challenges you to view the world differently. It challenges you to think differently, act differently, because it's for your benefit. The relationship builder looks for the customer's comfort zone. They hang out in the customer's comfort zone. Last thing relationship builder is going to do is push anybody outside their comfort zone. The challenger, on the other hand, is going to say, hey, you need to push. Let's take you here. This mountain's beautiful. You're going to love it up top. The challenger challenges them to go outside their comfort zone, to view the world differently, and to make different choices that will benefit them. Now, my journey has given me the opportunity to have a challenger in my life, actually many challengers. This is Casey, this young lady here who is helping me stand up. She was one of my PTs. You know, every single PT I had was wonderful, and every single one pushed me out of my comfort zone. The reason I'm standing here before you and not passing out, the reason I can walk, is because a PT was in my life, and they pushed me to. And they didn't push me and then abandon me. Look at her. She's leaning over. She's helping me do something that's very, very hard. And every time Casey came to me, she said, I think you're ready for the next step. I think you're ready to do something harder. And I came to trust Casey, and I said, if you say I'm ready, let's go do it. And she did a lot for me. Now, a few days after this photo was taken, doctor came by. Said, Craig, I've got a pill for you. It's going to make you feel better. By the way, it's highly addictive. I actually didn't say that, but it was highly addictive. He was trying to make me more comfortable. He's my relationship builder. Craig, you're going to feel great. Just take this pill. It's all going to be better. You can figure out withdrawal later. And I've told people multiple times, I would trade 3 doctors for 1 PT because of the impact they made in my life. These PTs are challengers. And that's what happens with customers. When you come into their life and challenge them in a way where they know that you want their good, you become more valuable to them than somebody that just shows up with a blister pack of pills that will make you feel better. You're the one that has the unique ability to take them to that higher place. That's a big reason why challengers outperform every other sales category. Now, the traits of the challenger are that they teach, they tailor, and they take control. And they found when there's a high level of intersection of those 3 traits, that's the makings of a challenger. In terms of tailoring, if you think about that, tailoring is recognizing that when you meet different people, talking to them, they're going to have different priorities. You have to tailor your talk to their priorities, their needs. So if I'm talking to a business owner, the things that are important to a business owner and the way they make decisions are much different than the way an employee makes decisions. So if I talk to a business owner like they're an employee, it's not going to go well. If I talk to an employee like they're a business owner, it's not going to go well. They have different priorities. So the challenger identifies that and speaks to that. You may be familiar with the term personas. That's one of the reasons that we develop personas, buyer personas, so we can figure out what are the unique personalities, what are the things that drive them. The second thing is to take control. That means they drive the sales conversation. They don't follow it. There's a lot of things that I could put into this to break it down, and that would get very complicated quickly. Here's a shortcut. If you're asking questions, you're in control of the sales conversation. If you're answering questions, they're in control of the sales conversation. That's a big indicator, and that's a big way. If you're ever in a sales discussion and you want to know if you're in control or if they're in control, who's asking the questions. It doesn't mean you don't answer their questions, but it's more of who's driving the discussion. The third trait is that they teach. And this goes back to they show the customer something new. They show them a view of the world they have not seen before. And that's really important because that's one of the places where you're adding value. One of the tools they use in teaching is something called a 6-stage teaching pitch. And this is a really powerful tool. Once I learned it, I actually restructured every presentation I did to follow this format, by the way, including this one I'm giving now. And so the first stage is a hook. This is where you have to hook them with their big idea, not your big idea. So your big idea is, hey, I want to sell my product or service. Their big idea is a little bit different. And one of the ways that we try to get to their big idea is I'm selling this product or service so they can, and I fill in the blank. Once I have that statement, then I ask again, so they can, and I fill in the blank. And I keep going until I finally end up with a statement that sounds a lot more like about them than it does about me. You know, and one thing that's important to remember is everybody has a boss. I don't care who you are. The CEO has a boss. It's called board of directors. If you're a consultant, you have a boss. It's called the customer, the client. Everybody has a boss. And everybody wants to look good in front of their boss. There's a little shortcut when you're trying to find the big idea. If you're struggling, trying to figure out what matters to their customer, figure out who their boss is and what would make them look good in front of their boss. That's one thing. There are obviously others, but if you're struggling, that's the shortcut. Now, what's important in stage 1, you don't talk about yourself. You don't talk about yourself in stage 2. You don't talk about yourself or your company in stage 3 or 4. You don't even talk about yourself or your company in stage 5. The first place you talk about yourself is stage 6. So stages 1 through 5 are about your customer. And you start with the big idea. The next stage is you have to reframe. You have to show them a view of the world they have not seen before. You have to challenge the paradigm that they're operating under. Their response should be, aha, or I never thought about it that way. If their response is, yeah, that pretty much agrees with what I believe, you've got a problem. You've failed. And I've had that happen a few times where I get to that stage and somebody says that and I'm like, uh-oh, something's wrong here. You have to show them a view of the world they haven't seen before. Now, stages 3 and 4 are what I call the perils of the status quo. If you don't change, you're going to run into problems. So the status quo has its flaws. And we like to think about it in terms of left brain, right brain. Now, I know I'm talking to some marketers. You may say, well, it's really system 1, system 2, and I agree. More people understand left brain, right brain, so I'm just going to keep it there. Left brain, rational drowning, facts, figures, and data that show if you maintain the status quo, bad things happen. Right brain, stage 4, emotional impact. This is goals, business goals, life dreams that are imperiled by maintaining the status quo. I'll give you a B2B example from the 1980s. There was a day when if you bought a PC, you bought it from IBM. Who else would you buy a PC from? And then some little startup in Houston started making computers that were kind of cool. It's called compact computers. And IBM started losing sales to compact computers. And they panicked. They didn't know what to do. They didn't have a response to it. So they came out with an ad that read, nobody ever got fired for buying IBM. We know that's a B2B ad because if it was a B2C ad, it would say nobody ever got divorced because they bought IBM. And so what's amazing about that ad is there is zero benefit to the business in the ad. It is 100% benefit to the individual who's making the purchasing decision for the computers they're about to buy. You buy IBM, you don't have to go home and tell your family the summer vacation's canceled. And so that's an example of imperiled life dreams, goals. And one of the things I find many companies fall into, if they're doing B2B sales, they get singularly focused on the needs of the business, and they forget that there's a human being that's making that purchasing decision. And that human being is thinking about, how's it going to make them look in front of their boss? Are they going to have to go home one day and tell their family they got fired? Not going to the beach this summer. I went to the Texas beach for the first time last year. Lived in Texas almost 20 years, never been. Maybe not going to the beach isn't such a bad thing.
It's not a bad thing, depending on which one you went to.
Yeah. So anyway, once you've done this, you've painted the perils of the status quo. You start pivoting. You present a new way, a better way. And this new way should fit your offering like a finely tailored suit that fits you and none other. Remember I said you don't talk about you in this phase? You don't have to. This is where you say, if you want to avoid the perils of the status quo, you should do this, and then you should do this, and then you should do this. Your customer will connect the dots that you do it that way. You don't have to tell them. As a matter of fact, it hurts your sales when you do because it makes you sound like a salesperson. Just tell them, here's how it goes. They'll connect the dots, that's how you do it. And when you do that correctly, you get to stage 6, and often they'll just say, how do we get started? Stage 6 is implementation. Here are the next steps. And that's your 6-stage teaching pitch, and this is the first stage where you talk about you. But that's because they're mostly sold anyway. They just want to make sure you can deliver on everything you just painted out. Now, one of the questions that people have is, will this work for my business? You don't understand. My business is different. My industry is different. Common refrain. I'm going to show you how this worked for a business that sold commodities that you would argue is not a complex sale. And they used this methodology to decommoditize their business. Who's heard of Grainger? Yeah. So Grainger sells commodities to businesses. We've got duct tape, we've got mop buckets, we've got fasteners, chairs, light bulbs. These are things you can buy on Amazon. And Grainger said, I wonder if we can use this 6-stage teaching pitch to increase sales. And they did. And it did. And so stage 1, they came out and they said companies spend too much on MRO products because they don't understand their buying habits. MRO is maintenance, repair, and operations. So they're coming to the customer saying, we believe you're spending too much money. It's a weird thing for a salesperson to say. Usually the salesperson wants you to spend more money on them. It's about their big idea. We think you're spending too much money on MRO products. Stage 2, studies show that 40% of MRO purchases are unplanned. So you have a big portion of your operations budget, you have no idea what's coming. Yeah. You see how that feels?
Yeah.
That's that aha. That's the aha that I'm talking about. You have to deliver that for your customer. It has to surprise them, catch them off guard, give them a view of the world they have not previously seen. Stage 3, process costs can be more than the price of the product, and distributing across multiple suppliers reduces your bargaining power. Let me translate that. If you've ever worked for a big company and you wanted to buy something, you probably had to go get multiple signatures, multiple approvals. And if you ever took the time to sit there and say, well, his time was worth that much, her time was worth that much, and you sit there and add it up, many times you figure out that the value of the time that the people that had to approve the decision exceeds the purchase price of what you're buying. Well, that's kind of silly. And then when you do that across multiple suppliers, you reduce your bargaining power. That's stage 3. Stage 4, Meeting unplanned needs is a long and costly process. Employees tend to overbuy items to avoid future pain, and then they get lost in storage closets. So let's talk about Grainger. Maybe there's a vent fan that failed. They call supplier number 1, you got this vent fan? No. Supplier number 2, you got this vent fan? No. Supplier number 3, you got this vent fan? Yeah. They go through, they do all the paperwork, go through all the hassle. They're like, oh, crap. This vent fan's going to fail again. I'm going to order 2. So they ordered 2 vent fans. They only need 1. They order 2. They install the 1 vent fan. They take the other vent fan. They carry it over to the storage closet. Close the door. Year passes. Dust starts collecting. Year 2 passes. Dust starts collecting. Year 3, the vent fan fails again. Does anybody remember that there's a vent fan in the storage closet? So you're buying 2 vent fans to fill 1 need. Well, that sucks. That's money you probably could have used to grow your business and look good in front of your boss. That's stage 4. Stage 5, a better way, a new way. Increase important investments by minimizing unnecessary spends on the 40% of unplanned purchases. You can achieve this with a broad category supplier. You don't need or want your employees spending all this time having more process costs to go buy regular things. You want them to have one place that they can go. They can get something for somewhat of a pre-negotiated price, and they can install it and get back to work. That's a better way, a new way. By the way, Grainger is the only company that has the diversity of products, the deep catalog, and the deep analytics to pull this off. Grainger used this. They sell commodities, and they decommoditize their business using this 6-stage teaching pitch. Now, there's a way you can score it because you're getting the idea. Here's how I put together the teaching pitch, but how do I know when I got there? Well, the folks at KPMG, including a fellow named Neil Rackman, they came up with a grading system, and they call it the SAFE Bold Scale. SAFE and BOLD are acronyms, and you'll see that they really stretched it to try and make the acronym fit, but we'll get the concepts. So, is your idea a small idea, or is it a big idea? The stronger pitch will be on the big idea side. Next, this is about risk. Is it achievable or outperforming? This is where they really stretch the words to match the acronym. Basically, how much change do I have to make to implement this? This is where this is counterintuitive. You would say, oh, I don't want to ask my customer to change a lot. The way they score it is the more you're asking the customer to change, the better you are. Part of that's because when you get them moved over to this new thing, the chances of them moving back are less. How many people have left Salesforce? Once you go through the pain of setting up Salesforce, requires a lot of change. Very few people go back the other way. Again, you want to score on the 10 side. Next is following versus leading edge. Are you coming out and saying, hey, these other 5 guys do this? We do it also. Or are you leading edge? I don't know anybody else doing this. That's the other thing that's going to push you into a highly effective pitch, is the more you can score on the 10 side of that. And lastly, easy versus difficult. And this is about implementation. If it's easy for them to do themselves, well, they'll just do it themselves. If it's difficult for them to do themselves, well, they need you. And so the more that you can score on this side of things, the better the 6-stage teaching pitch you'll have. Here's the really cool thing. You're probably wondering, what's it take to be a challenger, and is it a DNA issue? It's not. I think relationship builders, we've met them. They just have that touch. You know, everybody feels good when they're around them, and you're like, wow, I wish I could do that. And so it's hard to really have somebody to take somebody that's not a natural relationship builder and make them one. But a challenger, anybody can do it. Think about it as being like dance steps. Now, I don't dance, but from what I understand, if you learn a few moves, once you get those few moves down, you can get out on the dance floor and look like Fred Astaire and just do amazing things. Well, this 6-stage teaching pitch and this challenger choreography is the same thing. It's about building a few basic building blocks, and then you just pull it together and you adapt based on, you tailor based on who you're talking to. And anybody can do it. I do believe the least likely to adopt it are the relationship builders, because life has taught them that they have a silver tongue and they can get people to just fall into their spell. And I think that is very, very hard for them to walk away from. They can become a challenger, but I think it's probably harder because they're in fear to leave their own comfort zone. Again, remember, these are the people that help the customer find their comfort zone and stay there. So last year when I went on the ventilator, pretty much straight away they told my wife I was going to die. By the way, that's where the scar came from. They slit my lip open. You know, first couple of days they put me on the ventilator. Not really sure how. They didn't chart it, but that's where that comes from. But my wife came in. She came to me every day that I was there, and she would sing to me, and she'd pray over me, and she would say words of encouragement. And she would see a positive sign, and she would go to the doctors and say, hey, this is good, right? And the doctor said, no, he's going to die. She'd see something else. She'd like, hey, this is good, right? The doctor's like, no, he's going to die. They had her meet with hospice to plan the day they would pull the plug. And they even drug her into a conference room, and they put my chart up on the wall and said prognosis, multiple organ failure leading to death. I need to find that. I've meant to frame that. But eventually I didn't die. And she went to the doctors and she said, this is going to be good, right? This is good, right? And the doctor's like, he won't be right in the head. Yeah. She's like, well, that's normal. And so... But these were experts. And the experts kept telling her again and again and again a doom and gloom scenario. And the experts are talking again. They're talking about the economy. They're saying, you know what, Mr. CEO, you need to start cutting. You won't make it through this if you don't cut. Well, that's not good. Let's jump back here. Am I still sharing? I think back. Okay. There we go. Casey, am I online? Okay. All right. So, just like the experts came and told my wife, there is no hope. Here's what you need to do. The experts are coming out today and saying, it's bad. You need to cut. Facebook announced they're going to, well, sort of announced they're going to cut about 12,000 people. Google's doing cuts. You know what's amazing about those companies? They have tens of billions of dollars in the bank, cash and cash equivalents. more than enough to make it through the recession. They could say, we hope everybody else cuts. We're going to use our resources to invest because this is a good time to invest. And it is. But the experts are going to tell you to take other advice. And what I'm saying is don't listen to the experts. Be like my wife. Do what's right. And when you do that, and if you use this methodology, you'll find that something that looks extremely hard is a lot easier than you thought. So that's all I had. I've got a little exercise that I'm going to have everybody do here in person and the folks online. I apologize to the folks online for not looking at the camera. Not a TV personality, not used to that. But before I jump to the exercise, I want to take any questions.
Mind at 40%, obviously, you saw that.
Yeah.
And you're absolutely right about the relationship. I didn't know there was all those different kinds about the relationship seller. So you said it's easy to become a challenger, right? Oh, can you not hear me? Oh. It's easier you can become a challenger, right? So is that what this exercise is going to be?
So the exercise is I'm going to have you score yourselves. It's going to be a self-assessment to help you figure out what your natural sales style is. And then for you, what you do with that next is up to you.
That's interesting because I always thought I was a relationship seller, but I don't want to be anymore.
Right. Right.
So, interesting.
Did I mention that I followed the 6-stage teaching pitch format in putting this presentation together?
Yeah.
I thought maybe there would be some cosmic disruption if I gave a pitch about 6-stage teaching pitch that was not a 6-stage teaching pitch. Something just felt very wrong about that.
Yeah.
Tim asked online, so why were you in the hospital in the first place?
Okay, so for those that don't know, the question was, why was I in the hospital in the first place? I had COVID, had a very severe case of COVID. It's bizarre, less than 1% of people that went to the hospital, or less than 1% of people that got COVID went to the hospital. Usually those were people with comorbidities and other issues. I was on 0 medication when I went into the hospital. I was running 3 miles in the Texas heat. And it's weird. I'm an outlier. And the reason the doctors were so convinced that I was going to die was everybody else they had given that treatment to died. When I went through, it was Delta variant, and 100% of the people that preceded me in that hospital died. So I'm an outlier on that one as well.
So what are the ways that you found to so you tailor the pitch, but how do you tailor if you don't know the person?
Good question. So for those that didn't hear the question online, the question is, you have to tailor the pitch, but when you meet somebody, how do you know who you're dealing with? My answer to that would be is if you do really good persona work, you'll be able to quickly identify who you're dealing with. Now, some of that, some people are just naturally intuitive and they'll pick up on that faster than others. What I would do is I would try to really have good persona work and figure out what are the 3 or 4 questions I need to ask to figure out who I'm dealing with. So in the field of financial advisors, who we've worked with, there are 9 personas of high net worth investors. And there are 4 questions that if you ask those 4 questions, you will know which of the 9 personas you're dealing with. And so once you know that, so like the number 1 persona of high net worth investors is family stewards. They invest to build to create a financial legacy for their kids and grandkids. The number 2 persona is an independent. Their number one reason they invest is so that they can walk in to work one day and tell the boss to shove it, they're done. So it doesn't take long if you just say, what's your primary goal in investing? If you have somebody just talking about their kids and they're like, pull out their wallet and say, here, let me show you pictures of my kids. You're probably dealing with a family steward. So it's just doing the hard work of personas and figuring out what makes them unique, what makes them tick. And if that's hard at first, I would encourage to stay at it. It's like so many other things. The more you practice it, the easier it becomes. But I also believe that a day will come when it just becomes so natural. You see somebody like, oh yeah, that's what I'm dealing with. This is who I'm dealing with. And you can naturally respond.
Do your homework.
Hmm?
Do your homework, basically.
Yeah. There's some shortcuts we can't eliminate.
That's good. I gotta do some homework.
Any other questions? Anything online? Anything?
No, I'm waiting for this exercise.
All right.
How would you take something like many of us are doing? Like, here's one that I've seen over and over again. Like, I can do SEO or I can have SEO. Right? I can't, and so but you get, and the customer doesn't know the difference. Right?
You can do SEO versus
Another SEO, right?
Hmm.
The customer doesn't know quality.
Right.
They're not in the industry. So you've got different voices that are saying different things. How do you come in and be the big idea in what seems like a routine, like everybody's got their, oh no, that person doesn't know, this is the way you do it.
Yeah, so, I actually started in SEO. And when I was looking at it, I thought, okay, I get this. You want more traffic to your website. And I had a professor that said, tell me how I am paid, and I will tell you how I will act. So you hire an SEO, what's an SEO going to get you? They're going to get you traffic. And at one point I thought, I bet you they want leads more than they want traffic. So I started learning about conversion optimization, figure out how to get more of that traffic converted into leads. And once I got there, I was like, I think what they want more than leads are customers.
An outcome.
Right. And what I see so often amongst marketers, and I think it's getting better, but very often somebody says, so what's the first thing an SEO is going to say? Let's say you're an SEO and somebody's coming in, somebody else is sneaking into the account trying to steal your business. What are they going to tell the business operator?
Well, a bad SEO is going to come in and say, well, here's all the things that this person's doing wrong.
Yeah.
Right? You're fear, uncertainty, and doubt.
Yeah.
They're going to take a tyrant in their caps. A good SEO is going to elevate that conversation to those outcomes and ask the question, are you getting the outcome you're expecting?
Yeah. Exactly. And that's fertile ground. A lot of them are going to say, hey, I can get you on page 1 for 20 terms. Now, there's only 19 people in the world searching for these 20 terms, but I'll get you to page 1. Well, that's not what really matters. And it's like you say, it's about turning the conversation, turning the conversation in a different direction. But part of that is, there's who knows how many SEOs out there. If you look like every other SEO out there, well, it's really going to be hard to deliver a stage 5 where you present a new way, a better way that fits you and only you. And so that is one thing that's really important, is to find that unique differentiation. And I'm sorry, I forgot. Garrett. Derek. Sorry, Derek. As Derek said, you got to focus on outcomes. That's the big idea. It's all about the outcome. Any other questions? So we're going to do an exercise, and do the folks online have the link? Okay. The other thing, while I'm passing this out, so what I want you to do is, and let me make sure I have this pointed the right way. So you'll see 10 questions on the front side of the page. Don't look to the second page. Go through and score the 10 questions, whether you strongly agree, strongly disagree, or whatever. The scale's on here. Once you've answered all 10 questions, flip it over. You'll write the answers in. You'll have to add a few numbers, and we'll talk about the results. After we do this, just kind of a preview of where we're going next is next week, we're holding a challenge. It's a free challenge to help folks develop their sales style. So let me hand this out.
I think we needed about 6 months ago for state of search for sponsors. I'm sure I have more. No, I need a bag of them.
Kevin, give this a try. See if this. Oh, you found? Do you need a pen?
I don't think I have one.
You do?
See if that works.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Sorry to stab you.
Being the person who walked into this room and went, oh my, I don't have a computer, I might not be able to see this presentation.
Oh.
I'm quite happy to bring it up on this page.
Well, you see, I did.
Okay, we'll give it another minute.
I've heard great things about that bus.
It's really nice.
My son was on that and he really liked it a lot.
My challenge is my kid goes to school in Georgetown
Oh,
and plays football there, so we're there like other weekends.
yeah,
To go to Austin and then rent a car and come up, it's easier to drive.
yeah, yeah. Georgetown's still pretty far north.
30 miles. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's 30 miles of thick traffic.
Exactly. To where to get there from here, Georgetown, it's easy.
Yeah.
2 hours and 45.
Yeah, no, it's like it's nice. I like it. It's if I look at that versus flying, it's about the same time.
Yeah,
So you're welcome.
a lot more flexible.
All right, folks online, are they still with us? Are they good? So, does anybody want to share what they discovered?
That's exactly what I thought.
What's that?
That relationship builder and hard worker.
Yeah.
But I have recently switched careers, so it would have been different. But I was answering with today's knowledge of what I'm doing compared to what I used to do.
Yeah. The good thing is anybody can be a challenger. Not everybody can be a relationship
Well,
builder.
I'm kind of close. I mean, I'm
So what were your scores for?
down below.
Yeah.
797.
That's actually really good. It's really good.
866 here, so yeah.
866. Did you have any at the top that rose out?
So, lone wolf and hard worker, I think the one I would probably is number 7, the way I read that question. And it's just kind of critical in my industry. It's not going to solve everything yourself, but we solve it in small teams.
Mm-hmm.
So I answered that a lot lower than it's probably, yeah, everybody's got to step up and solve problems.
Yeah.
But anyway.
Yeah. You have any insights you want to share?
I scored the lowest and takes control. It's probably because I'm really passive. So it makes sense that I need to step up in that.
Well, the good news is, that's the one I scored the lowest on as well. And when I looked at it, when I looked at it, it was one of the 2 questions that I scored low on. It was the one about, feeling like I could go into a challenging sale and take control of the sale. And I realized we have a funnel that we've developed over a number of years, where the way I describe it is we don't sell, we create an environment where people want to buy. And I like that better. And so that ends up helping me significantly compensate for that. But that's something, another topic that we talk about is something called a first-time offer. That you take something that, well, let me give an example of where at least the old kids remember there was a company called Columbia House Records where you could get 13 albums. You could get 13 albums for a penny, and it automatically enrolled you into their record club. Well, then they went to CDs, and I guess at some point people quit buying CDs. But the thought was, hey, all we have to do is find people that we know want to build their record collection, and so we'll lose a ton of money on the first sale, but to get them into the record club, and they will.
They made it back real quick on me.
For complex sales, when we think about, so that's a very, very simple version of a first-time offer for a simple sale. If you're in the services business especially, we recommend that it have 3 to 5 deliverables, that the deliverables are almost milestones that take them from where they are in the direction that they want to be. But of course, you don't want to solve all their problems in that. But there are a few things I talk about another time about structuring the first time offer. The reason I bring that up is I don't like putting the squeeze on people. It's just not my personality. Doesn't make me feel good. And so we use this to bring somebody into our funnel and basically convert somebody to a customer as quickly and cheaply as you can, and then move them from there up to your core product. And so that helps compensate if you're scoring low in that. That's a way around that. Kevin, do you have any thoughts you wanted to share?
Just the same thing Joe was saying. Takes control is my weakest on the bottom sections. Sometimes, not that I won't speak my mind, but sometimes just going along with something. Yeah.
Sometimes it's easier.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, if this is something that you want to try, I mean, if this makes sense and you want to start putting together a challenger sale for yourself, we can't do everything in the week next week, but if you go there and sign up, what we're going to do is we're going to meet from 3 to 4, Monday through Friday next week. It'll be recorded, so if you can't make every day, the recording will be there. We're not keeping the recordings up forever. There's a few reasons for that. One, you'll never watch the videos. We know how people are. You know, you'll say, oh, I'll get to that next month when I don't have all these deadlines. Next month. Yeah, and we're in the business of change. We want to see people's lives changed. And so we're going to throw a few deadlines in there just to make sure that you're actually moving in that direction. And so feel free to sign up for that. You just go to alliesforme.com/DFWSEM. And you can sign up. We'll be meetings via Zoom meeting, not Zoom webinar. It's going to be interactive. And so you can ask questions and you can get some feedback. The general format is we're going to do about 30 minutes of content with 30 minutes for Q&A. We'll see how that works out. Sometimes, life is dynamic. But that is all I had for you this evening. Any questions before we wrap up?
No, it was awesome. That was really, really awesome.
Well, thank you.
I apologize for not knowing your name.
That's all right.
I won't forget it now.
I'm the dude with the scar. Any questions online? What's next steps? Do we have time to fill, or what do you want to do?
We can end it anytime we want.
Yeah. I love this.
We can end it, and then we can sit and chat if you want.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is really solid. I'm just looking at some of the weak points I have, and it's like, well, is it bad? Is it like,
It's interesting because I would have answered some of these a little differently if I was still in that other business.
Oh, okay. So you think that other environment?
Because I knew almost everything there was to know in that other environment. In my new environment, in the SEO world, I don't know everything. So I'm a little uncomfortable. I can only, as you know, do it like I was a business owner and understand where a business owner is coming from, but I'm not ever worked in the SEO world.
They're
like
playing
agency.
So before, if you're talking to a customer, they're playing in your sandbox.
Correct.
And now it's like not totally sure, but
right.
Yeah.
I mean, I know a lot of things to be dangerous, but I don't know everything. So, and you know how broad that world is, exactly what you said, right? Traffic, and actually going through that with one of my clients now, he wants traffic. Well, no, you don't. You want the phone to ring.
I think the more technical, the more as the practitioner you get into it, the more likely you are to devalue your own skills.
I would agree with that. Yeah, I would agree with that.
If I have to defend my own results and my own, it's much harder. If I already have a confidence that I know what I need to know and I get my people to do the job, I can sell that easier, because if I have confidence in them, that's good enough for me.
Right, that makes sense. I would agree with that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Have you found that that winds up holding true, that the person who's like, I don't know if you've like have done a study of like practitioners versus like management, and never.
That's a good question. Probably if I were to, the short answer is I don't know the answer to that, but if I were to take a stab in the dark, I would probably lean on the imposter effect or imposter syndrome. Are you all familiar with imposter syndrome? Yeah. So, yeah, anybody that's still online, imposter syndrome, it's when you have it, it's actually a pretty good sign that you've reached such a high level of achievement that you think everybody around you is going to figure out that you're an imposter very quickly. And all that means is that you've mastered whatever you're doing so well that you think anybody could do this. And the reality is, most people can't do it. I had a professor in college who he worked in the defense industry for a number of years, for most of his career, and he was truly brilliant, absolutely brilliant. And the thing that he did, he helped build up the defense industry of the 70s and 80s, and he did target recognition, where his job was to make a system that would identify, is this a Soviet T-72 tank or an American M1 Abrams, and make that decision faster than the enemy could. And if it's a T-72, shoot it. Well, he was doing that with like 8088 processors, that are just horrible. They didn't have a lot of processing power. And there were tons and tons of PhD dissertations on how to do this. And I watched him in 2 minutes take this entire field and boil it down to something that an undergraduate student would immediately understand. He made it look so simple that anybody could do it. And that's somebody who's truly mastered his craft. And so I think that's, I met somebody who was a futurist working for AMD. And he was talking about doing product definitions for products. So if AMD is making a processor, development time is like 18 months. Once the product's defined and moving along. And so then you figure there's time that they have to do product definition before that. And so when you see a new microprocessor release, this is something they started thinking about actually more than 3 years ago, in many cases 5 years ago. And I asked him, it's like, Paul, how do you do that? And he explained, it's like, oh, it's really easy. And you just look at this, and this. And I sat there and listened to him. I was like, oh yeah, I could probably do that. And then you step back and you realize, oh no, he's just such an expert. He made the difficult sound easy. And so I think that's probably, if I had to take a guess, why people devalue their skills. They're just so good at it that they think anybody can do this.
It's become simple to them.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a hard one to overcome sometimes. I think it's the trap of expertise. You don't know what common knowledge is about your field anymore.
Right. Yeah. Well, I think about things, sometimes I'm afraid if I show somebody, hey, here's how you do such and such. Well, so Kevin knows that I'm very fond of first-time offers. And I think, well, once I show people how to put this together, anybody can do it. I forget that it took me 18 months of fumbling around before I had something that even started working. And what I've learned is on many things I can say, okay, here's exactly what you do. And then when people go and try to replicate it, they skip small but important steps. So that's my thought. Anyway.
Yeah, I know that trying to explain things, I'm like, oh yeah, da, 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 da. I stopped doing that after a while. About 20 minutes just doesn't like. But yeah, just rattling off stuff. That was common for me. It's like, anybody can do this, and I would get people, and I was so excited and trying to like, and I realized like the blank stare sometimes is what started tipping me off.
Yeah.
That effect.
Glassed over a look on their face.
We're good.
So how do you like listen for like before moving from one stage to the next? I don't know. Before moving from one stage to the next, do you have like, is there kind of like signs, or is it just you're guiding it along and you just kind of like you're done with that spot and you move?
Well, that may, I mean, that may be a better question for you. I mean, you just saw me give you a 6-stage teaching pitch. Did the transitions seem seamless or punctuated?
It seems smooth.
Seems.
Yeah. I would say it's more like telling a story. You're just telling a story and you're just moving from bit to bit to bit. I mean, here, let me back up a little bit. If you want, I can break down, I can show you exactly how the presentation I just gave you is a 6-stage teaching pitch. Does that seem interesting?
Sure. Yeah.
All right. So let's back up. Okay, probably, let me start off from the beginning. Probably the best piece of advice somebody ever gave me. He was a professional speaker. He said, and he got it because somebody gave it to him. He said, so you all have been to the conferences. What's the first slide? Here's why I'm me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, cut that slide. Kevin's shocked.
Like sacrilege.
Yeah, no, cut that slide. Think about what people, just by being on stage, you have authority. The fact that somebody put you on stage gives you authority. And there are a lot of things that, I'll give you an example. You see customers that talk about, hey, we're trusted. We're the most trusted, blah, 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 blah. And what I would say is, don't tell them you're trusted. Act like somebody who's trustworthy. So there's a principle. They use it in good writing. They use it in good movies. And the principle is show, don't tell. Don't tell people what they should believe. Don't tell them what they should feel. Show them what it looks like that makes them feel and believe those things. But if you tell a story and, not the path that I planned for myself, but I just ended up with a Mac Daddy of a story that has tons and tons of applications. It's memorable, and it helps make the point. I can use different parts of the story. I was in the hospital for 3 months. There's a lot that happened then. There's been a lot that happened after I got out of the hospital. I've got an application for all sorts of things, and it's a memorable story. This would be, I would say, a little bit of credibility building. So it's not an official stage, other than the hook is, look at the question there. There's the hook. Which sales personalities dominate complex sales? And anybody that does sales wants to know, is that me?
You're already thinking what you are, right? You're already thinking that, you already know what you are, and you're thinking, oh, I got the best.
Yeah. So this is stage one. We're kind of setting the hook. And this is a little bit of a gradual transition. I have to say, there are 5, this would be the first part of stage 2, the aha moment, saying there's 5 sales personalities. Now, if you're like me, I thought the relationship builder was the dominant sales personality. Right there's the clue, them transitioning into that aha moment. Sales relationship builders, not the best, they're actually the worst. Holy crap. Everything Everything I thought true in the world is wrong. This is stage 2. Stage 3 and stage 4, perils of the status quo. So the first thing I have to do is set the stage. I go to, again, a memorable story, a real event that happened, and make the point that at least from where we are today, you've got 18 months that's going to be driving people's behavior. So this is a little bit of stage 3 and 4 combined, because I'm trying to tap into what are your hopes, what are your life dreams. You're probably hoping to not have sales suck for the next 18 months or longer if you believe, whatever you believe. And that's the thing, I really don't care what people believe about this. There's enough disbelief in the economy to know that there's a sting. So here I'm starting to talk about, this is a little bit of stage 4. Right here, just hammering home, relationship builder suffers the most. Yeah, you thought life was bad? It's gonna suck. You're gonna hate life. You're not gonna meet your goals. You're not gonna be able to provide for your family. Things will be
Well,
bad.
it's interesting you say that because, back in 2008, when we started this other company and I worked with one of my aunts, I didn't believe in any of that stuff, and we doubled our business every single year.
That's awesome.
I'm a relationship builder, so that's why it throws me off a little bit.
And then that is interesting. I don't know what to say other than I was supposed to die.
Exactly, I was gonna say, I'm that little person like you, right?
Okay, this I would say is a little bit of, it's a preview to stage 5. There's a better way. And one thing that I try to keep in mind is when I'm talking to somebody, I'm renewing my lease on their attention every 10 seconds. And so I'm trying to think, I'm trying to set some, leave some things out there along the trail that kind of keep you engaged. There's a guy named Joe Sugarman, he died here somewhat recently, who was a direct response copywriter. And he wrote a wonderful book called The Copywriter's Handbook. That fantastic, not on Kindle, which is where I read most of my books. But it was funny, he was making this point about hooking, because this was somebody who would write 2, 3, 5, 10, 15-page sales letters. And he had to keep them engaged. And so in the section where he was talking about keeping you engaged, he'd drop something and then talk about something else and then come back and pick that up. And then he gets to the end of the section. He's like, okay, do you see what I just did? So that's a little bit of this. It's kind of setting the hook. Okay, stage 3, totally. You may be trying to cut costs. But if you cut costs, we know, because we have data, that's that stage 3 thing. We have data that says price is not the primary decider. And not only that, if you cut price during an inflationary period, the speed at which you're imperiling your business is only faster. So a little bit of stage 4 in that. Data, 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 data. It's all data. Stage 3. This is more data, but we're making a transition into stage 5. But remember what I said. If you're a relationship builder, you're only driving 4% sales revenue. If you're a challenger, you're driving 54%. Tell me, if you're a sales manager, how are you going to make decisions? Can you hear, nobody ever got fired for buying IBM?
That ad worked, right?
Yeah, it does. Yeah, unfortunately, fear always works. And you may not feel good about yourself the next day, but I mean, it depends upon how you're doing it. So here, I'm not trying to say, we obviously are using that here, but that's because we want you to change. We want you to come out, and we're going to throw you a lifeline here in a few moments to help you pull out.
It's not just that ad worked. I mean, Sears wired the entire Sears tower in Type 1 token link cables. Each cable is that thick, right before Twisted Pair came out. Why? Because IBM told them to do it. Guess who had the best benefit in selling all of that wiring? IBM. Wow. Used to be passed by it's now no longer the Sears tower. Just look at it and say, because IBM, it's the economy stupid, because IBM told them to do it. Jeez.
So here we start talking about the new way, the better way. We've talked about the Challenger. We've said that the Challenger does that. Here's what a Challenger looks like. We're going to explain it bit by bit. Here's how you know when you're dealing with Challenger. Here's what it feels like to be a Challenger. Tie back into the story that I opened with. Remember I said this story has endless applications. And when I tell you about what the PTs meant in my life, you can visualize that. You can feel that. It's not data. And this is real. I would seriously trade 3 doctors for 1 PT any day. And
I believed you. I believe that. I mean, I felt that genuinely from you.
oh yeah, the PT, except for the one that left me sitting up in a wheelchair for an hour without oxygen. With that exception, the PTs were wonderful.
Minor oversight.
Not everybody's perfect, right?
he was actually a really nice guy, and I'll spare you the details, but it was a rough PT session, probably rougher for him than it was for me. So if you can imagine that.
I don't know Casey, but I have very glowing thoughts about her.
She is truly wonderful. I would love to. I actually wrote the hospital and say, hey, I'd love to come by and bring some pizzas or something. I never heard back. I'd love to go back and thank them for what they did. But yeah, and this is true. Yeah, a few days after that photo was taken, doctor comes around. He said, Craig, I think you're anxious, so I'm going to prescribe you Xanax. And thankfully, my wife was sitting there, and she's like, and I didn't know. And she's like, yeah, that stuff's like highly addictive. And I learned more about that after the fact. But it was all about making me feel more comfortable. This year.
Relax you to heal better. Is that what the process was, to relax you to heal better?
It's so bizarre. So after that little walk where you saw Casey, and you know how long it's basically from here to the end of this table here. I get to the end of the table, I sit down, and I sound like I just sprinted a mile. I'm like, and this goes on for a few minutes. And the doctor thought it was anxiety. I'm like, no, I have jack squat for lung capacity. So I had, when I left the hospital, which was another couple weeks later, I had 750 milliliters of lung capacity. Normal for my height, age, et cetera, is pushing 3,000. Yeah. And the bizarre thing is, he worked in the same building. He could have kind of wandered in. He's like, hey, Casey, make Craig do that thing. I want to see his face to see if I should really give him this highly addictive medicine.
Wow.
And he didn't do that. And then when I got out of the hospital, I started going on walks around the neighborhood, and a little bit more of that little downplay, but I run across a doctor who lives in my neighborhood. He looks at me, he's like, yeah, you should get oxygen prescribed. I'm like, yeah, that's in the other direction of where I'm moving. So my phrase for doctors is, we have a pill for that.
Yeah.
So anyway, so this is just here to try to help you connect what a Challenger looks like in real life from an outside perspective where you can view it, and to see the value of that. I mean, you can clearly see the difference, and you see it in my emotions because it's what I truly feel.
I felt it. Yes. right there cheering you on with Casey. Is that her name?
Yeah.
And so I was like cheering you on because she's right there. She's really doing what really needs to be done, where the doctor is like, here, take a pill, chill, no big deal.
And if Casey walked in this room today, I'd probably bear hug her and cry.
I bet.
New way, better way, stage 5. Here's what Challenger looks like. New way, better way, stage 5. Here are the steps that the Challenger takes. New way, better way, stage 5. Here's how you do this. More of that. Okay. Here I'm dealing with doubt. Okay, that works for those companies. Does it work for my companies? So this isn't necessarily a part of that, but as marketers, we should know that we have to overcome objections. And one of the objections are, oh, but you don't understand, I'm different.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
So,
They did it very early on, I think those words.
yeah. So that's
But I love that you used Granger, because Granger is the perfect example.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah, because if they can decommoditize their business, anybody can.
There were many times I had to go to Granger and get what I needed to get.
Yeah. And again, new way, jumping back, new way, better way, stage 5,
I really like that slide. I thought that was impactful for me.
That was in the first version of this presentation I put together a few years ago. And then I took it out for several years. I added it back in last week. So thank you for that feedback. That's good to.
For me, it was impactful.
Yeah.
Because you can see, you want to head towards 10, right? You want to be 10.
Yeah. New way, better way. New way, better way. You can change. Going back and okay, yeah. I mean, as I look at this, there's a few things that I kind of insert on top of this. Again, dealing with objections. The world's telling you, you can't grow during this time. This is what the experts are saying. So I very intentionally made the experts look like fools and very, very cruel people.
Yeah, they were gonna.
Well, you read my wife's thing. Am I stretching the truth here?
No, it was bleak. No.
It's just why the saying is never, ever, ever, ever give up. Never, ever, ever, ever give up.
Right. Implementation, stage 6.
Yeah, that solidified everything.
Yeah. But here's the thing. Once I've figured out this formula, so unfortunately, most of what I do in life, I explore all the wrong ways of doing it before I finally settle in on the right way. And sales fell into that category. And I tried all sorts of things. I did training and I got the phrases. I'm sure you've seen some sales scripts and you're like, I can't say that. And then when you do, you just feel like you have to go home and take a bath.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. And so I just kept experimenting around, trying different things. And I had things start working for me. And then I discovered all this research about this Challenger sale. I'm like, oh, crap, that's kind of what I'm doing. I wish I'd read this many years ago. But when I'm going to make a presentation, so I spoke at Conversion Conference back in June, and I needed to make my presentation. Guess what format I used? 6-stage teaching pitch. You can use it for any single presentation you give.
Wow. That's gold. Gold. Awesome.
Yeah. So, and the thing is, you can sleep at night. You don't have to, there's nothing here I've presented that I don't believe 100%.
It was all pressure. I could never do that. I was very terrible back then. That's when I was of value because I didn't like the intimidation crap that they would teach you to try to sell. I was like so out.
Yeah.
I was never very good back
Yeah, and it's, I don't know. I guess there are people that do it. I mean, there are people that cold call. I don't get that.
then. Well, I don't think they do it as much as they used to, but that was huge in the 80s. Huge. My ex-husband did that. He was a cold caller and sold signs, outdoor electrical signs, one call.
Would you guys be interested in, well, you guys tell me. My bus leaves 6 a.m. tomorrow morning. Something you said just triggered a thought. Let me pull up 2 slides. Oh,
But that's fine.
yeah,
Please do it.
okay.
I didn't, before you pull up the slides, I wrote this down for you. A guy by the name of Jake Poehler.
Uh-huh.
And Jake was a founder of Disney U, and due to a healthcare experience of his own, created this business that they focus in that healthcare experience.
Wow.
You would be interested in what he's done and what he does.
No, thank you. It's, the last year has forced me to rethink a lot of things.
That's a cool. The other thing I will tell you, 26 years playing ice hockey, Raw Silicone does amazing things for scars.
Oh, yeah, I actually have a little, so,
Stay on it.
yeah.
You would be amazed.
Where'd you grow up?
Grew up here, lived up in Minnesota, Chicago, that kind of stuff.
Okay.
Raw Silicone, it's a little bit CVS. Yeah, it'll make things, I've got my face, believe it or not, a mess. Wow. Yeah. Yeah. Anyway, your story. This material was fascinating. We're about to embark on some offerings in my company that challenge people to be bold in this economy in a recession.
Yeah.
This was spot on. So,
Well, cool.
yeah, it's awesome.
Will I see you and yours in the challenge next week?
Me.
Okay.
My problem is I gotta go to New York and I got a big customer meet me up there that if they'll let me loose it at 4 to 5 Eastern, yes. But it's amazing.
Well, and they will be,
4 o'clock here, right?
yeah, no, 3 o'clock here. But they will be recorded. And so, are you up in New York all week?
All week.
Ah,
All week. Kind of a messy week, but anyway, this was really cool, guys.
all right, cool.
Yeah.
Good to meet you.
Thanks for being here.
No, that's all we got. Yeah. Always looks. Yeah, good stuff. Thank you.
JK.
So let me show you something real quick. When you talked about
Name issue.
Oh.
We talked and he just says, look, I knew him from somewhere. I couldn't tell you what business, I couldn't tell you what he did, or who he is, or who that. And I figured, is he coming to stick a search?
okay.
Yeah, I don't know. Are you coming to
No,
State
no,
Search?
he's scared.
Oh, yeah, I don't know. I don't have.
told you about it. Did you?
You gotta pull up. Oh, my. I don't know if I've got
Well, let
this.
him do his 2 slides.
So it's actually this one slide. So you mentioned the things that triggered my memories was sales in the 80s. So we, we go through pendulum swings as a society, and actually, so there's a guy in Austin named Roy Williams, runs the Wizard Academy. Yeah, a good chance that you've heard. Have you heard of 1-800-GOT-JUNK ad? Yeah, those are his ads. Do you remember, here's one blast from the past. You remember the De Beers commercials that had the dancing silhouettes where a husband and wife, you just see the silhouette of the husband and wife moving around, living life, and they're playing Vivaldi's Four Seasons, and then the very last part of the ad, he puts a diamond necklace around her neck or a diamond bracelet on her hand. Powerful, powerful commercials. Those were Roy's commercials. But Roy, very, very, very savvy marketer, and he's published a number of books. At least 3 have been bestsellers. One was the best business book of the year. And reason that you may not hear about him is he's primarily a radio guy. Now, he understands other mediums. The reason he's a radio guy is if you're doing mass media, if you have a mass market product like HVAC or 1-800-GOT-JUNK, the cheapest medium of all is radio. You know, he can come into a metro area like Dallas, and he can make 3 impressions a week for 52 weeks for 50 cents to $1 per person. That's why he's a radio guy. And but he wrote a book called Pendulum, and it's based somewhat off a book called The Fourth Turning, and it talks about how we move through different cycles. And apparently every 80 years we get a little bit cantankerous. We get a little bit polarized. We start hating our fellow man and doing a variety of things. We've done this before. We did it 80 years ago. We make lists of people that believe the wrong thing, say the wrong thing, associate with the wrong people, and we deny them employment. We did that back in the 40s and 50s. But it peaks every 80 years. So 160 years ago, we fought a civil war. 240 years ago, fought a Revolutionary War. 80 years before that, we had the Salem witch trials. This has been going on for thousands of years. And the way Roy breaks it down, and Roy's a marketer, so he's looking at it a little bit differently than the guy who wrote The Fourth Turning. And Roy said, I think we're basically made up of 2 cycles, 40 years of a me cycle, followed by 40 years of a we cycle. And it has a number of implications, and because Roy's a marketer, he wants to know how does it impact the way people buy. And here's what's really interesting. So the me cycle peaked in 83. We transitioned into a we cycle in 2003. And we are approaching the apex of our current we cycle next year. The good news of that is if you're tired of hating everybody around you, you get a break. We're going to start going back in the other direction, which is wonderful. I can't wait for that to happen. But during the me cycle, sales, the way you do sales is you push, overcome objections, selling is combat, self-confidence and belief, advertising specials, the sizzle, not the steak. And I run into company after company that has somebody in sales leadership that earned their sales chops in the 80s or 90s when that worked. And the challenge I face is saying, hey, we've changed. It's not about the push, it's about the pull. It's about positive attraction. It's about selling as seduction. It's about authenticity. That's why I can give a presentation and talk about deeply personal things. And they're true, but it's effective. It's about reality and truth. It's about the steak, not the sizzle. So as you're sitting down sorting through things, and you think about different things that have and have not worked, one of the parameters you need to put in is that something that worked in the 80s or 90s, or is that something that's working now? It's probably not the same. And it's not because we're more enlightened, it's just a cycle.
Like the clothes.
Yeah.
Just a cycle.
And it's, there's a lot more to this, but here's kind of interesting. So me, it's about personal wants and needs. Am I happy? Do I have status? We, it's about relationships and connections. Am I making a difference? Do I matter? By the way, something that's very common at the advent of a we cycle is there's a new technology that enables mass communications. We entered our current we cycle in 2003. A little company was founded up in a Harvard dorm room in 2004 called Facebook. In the 1930s, radio. President Roosevelt would have his fireside chats. So when you hear people say, hey, the internet's different, we've never been able to reach so many people at one time so quickly. They said the same thing about radio. They said the same thing about the Gutenberg press. People died because they printed the Bible.
Yes.
You see it showing up in McDonald's campaigns. Those are McDonald's campaigns for a little over 30 years. What's the common thread in those campaigns?
We do it all. You. We. You.
All about you. You deserve a break today. They haven't been as consistent since they've swung into a we cycle. But they're like, I'm loving it. It's what I eat and what I do. 2008, it's what we're made of. Much more of a we message than a me message. So, anyway, that's, yeah.
Very interesting. Very interesting.
Yeah. So I'm trying to do the we, and then they need to figure out how to make the shift now.
Yeah, well, we got another 20 years of we.